So I'm still in shock that I accurately predicted so many things about Zayne's third myth. I got a few comments asking me how I ended up doing this, so I decided to do a quick video on what I got right about Sacred Chapter and how you can also do logical theory crafting when it comes to not only Love and Deepspace, but any series, whether that's TV shows, movies, games, books, things like that. Anything with a story, basically. Remember, whilst it's exciting to be right about your theories, theory crafting is all about having fun, so never feel disheartened if your theories aren't right. I used to theory craft for Game of Thrones, and oh boy, did I get so many theories wrong than I did get right. So just remember that. Needless to say, there's going to be spoilers for Sacred Chapter, so don't proceed if you haven't watched or read it yet. So, let's start with a list of all the things I accurately predicted. The consummation ritual, marriage husband-wife dynamic, the god of medicine parallel, or how Zayne would teach humans about natural ways to create medicine, the bow and arrow weapon, the moon and sun, yin and yang, the Fractal Library Q&A connection, Zayne's ability to walk across time, the Creatio Protocore connection, the Master of Fate parallels, seeing other Zaynes in this myth, and MC's song to Foreseer foreshadowing the third myth. Now let's break all of these down by how I did it. The consummation ritual. How did I know this was going to happen? I broke this down in 3 ways. Understanding Zayne and MC's current relationship as a whole, understanding the importance of Snow's Embrace's priestess ritual scene, and looking for parallels within the game that would suggest this ritual was being conducted in some way. When you begin theory crafting, a lot of things come down to your gut feeling and finding evidence to back that up. For me, I looked closely at what was missing for Foreseer and Master of Fate when it came to their relationship with MC compared to Dr. Zayne and MC's relationship. I figured quite early on that in Dr. Zayne and MC's relationship, we saw a lot of dancing and sex, including a number of references to public sex, something else we saw in Sacred Chapter. It's this part, by the way, if you're confused. If you choose to seduce Zayne, you get public sex. This is something I spoke about on my first video, so I'm really glad to see public sex included in this myth. Anyway, moving on. So, I realised the one component missing from both Foreseer and Master of Fate stories was the sexual component after they had their dances with MC. This then led me to examine Snow's embrace. I noted that when Master of Fate spoke about the consummation, they purposefully made sure to engage our attention by making him stop for a second and place emphasis on the line, they consummate their relationship. So I decided the third myth for Zayne would therefore have to have this missing component. But I needed some more evidence to back that up. This is where you need to go through each story and find those connections and clues. This is something I can't teach you to do because it relies on how you interpret things. But for me, I was able to suss out that Moonlit Dream had similarities to Snow's Embrace. The Jade in Moonlit Dream parallels the Jade Guqin Master of Fate played during the dance. Zayne having a Shifu in Moonlit Dream and being the Shifu in Snow's Embrace, and Moonlit Dream having sex under the moonlight were my biggest clues. Now, I know I said sex was missing from Master of Fate and MC's relationship. However, they did dance under the moonlight, as they have sex under the moonlight in Moonlit Dream. So that was a parallel for me and pushed the theory further that sex was the missing component we must be seeing in the next myth. I also deduced it would end in disaster regardless because this would still only be part of the ritual, not the full thing. The marriage/husband and wife dynamic. How did I suspect we'd be married after watching the trailer? Well, again, I understood the dynamic between Dr. Zayne and MC. They were hinted at being very domestic throughout all of their cards and felt like a husband and wife. In Foreseer's myth, they effectively lived together, and then in Snow's Embrace, they lived together too. They came home to each other a lot as Dr. Zayne and MC, with no distinction between your place or my place. In addition, their total comfort around each other, doing daily activities, led me to think in the future we would see them as husband and wife. And then Moonlit Dream once again confirmed my theory when Zayne said he and MC were married. In the trailer, the Destiny Stone acted like a marriage register, where both MC and Zayne put down their names and promised their lives to each other. As we've seen, their lives in the literal sense too. The entire ritual we've learned about basically could be interpreted as a wedding ceremony. So when Zayne was trying to remove his name from the Destiny Stone, that paralleled to me like a divorce and why MC was so hurt by it and why she wasn't going to let it happen. Now, it's obviously much bigger than just a marriage. They are fated together. They have the string of fate, which I'm going to deep dive into at some point, I think. But right now, that's how I came to the conclusion they were married. Now, the god of medicine and Shennong and Galen link. This is the most interesting parallel I made. How was I able to deduce that Zayne would be some kind of god of medicine, or at least have the ability to help humans learn about medicine? As we know, he's the god of annihilation, but he also had the knowledge to help humans learn how to heal their mortal injuries with natural herbal remedies, and this is an important part of the myth that we see. So, this required a lot of research on my part. As you know, I honed in on Moonlit Dream. Zayne was called God of Medicine, so I decided to look up Chinese mythology referring to a god of medicine. I then discovered Shennong, who had a lot of similarities to Zayne. A major one was that Shennong was born with an ox's head. I knew that Zayne was born in the year of the ox, so this connected to him perfectly. In addition, Shennong was also called the Divine Husbandman, confirming my marriage theory. I gasped when MC ate the poisonous plant because Shennong also had a history of poisoning himself too. I freaked out basically. So, I then looked up connecting Greek theories as I had a suspicion there may be another link there too. And who did I find? Galen. And Galen was the name of Zayne in Immediate Disorder. So how did I make the connection that we'd see elements of Shennong and Galen in the third myth? It was Moonlit Dream, foreshadowing the third myth. So that's how all of that came together. Guys, as a reminder, if you want to see my videos in which I talk about this, my last 2 videos go into this in detail. So definitely take a look if you want to find out more about how my mind was working. Bow and arrow weapon. How did I suspect that a bow and arrow would be the next weapon? Well, again, I did some research on Chinese mythology. I came across Houyi and Chang'e, the moon goddess. And Houyi and Chang'e were not only married, but Houyi was famed for shooting down suns with his bow and arrow. And as we've seen, all of Zayne and MC's special attacks for their regular companions have a bow and arrow. Now, this was good, but I needed more, and that's when my next prediction came in to help me confirm this. The moon and sun, yin and yang. Once again, Moonlit Dream was drowning in moon imagery, so I knew I was on the right track again. I remembered the importance of yin and yang in Snow's Embrace, and Snow's Embrace, as you know, connected to Moonlit Dream for me. So Houyi shooting down suns made him the sun, and Chang'e was already known as a moon goddess. They were yin and yang. I also discovered that the ox was considered yang, which is Zayne. So immediately my theory had a lot of credibility. Other important connections I made included the foreshadowing in Zayne's Adventure Above the Clouds event story. MC called Zayne her son, and they were looking for a treasure. In addition, they see a hot spring shaped like the sun. This turns out to be the treasure. And what did we get in the third myth trailer? The pool. So I was screaming during the trailer, and pretty much after I read the myth, I was blown away. Now, the Fractal Library Q&A story. This is the one I'm probably most proud of. There is a story in the Fractal Library Q&A told by the administrator that I could not get out of my head. This is where my gut feelings came in, and I had to fight to prove that with evidence. So, here's part of the Fractal Library Q&A story. It was set in a world obsessed with efficiency. People had no names, only numbers. Those empowered genetically screened embryos and, based on the results, decided their entire lives, what education they'd get, what work they'd do, whom they'd love and marry, and even the traits of their children. Everything was determined by genetics, and the talents bestowed by the gods were fully realized. Nature and nurture, when perfectly fused, left no room for debate. No matter where you looked, it seemed like flawless harmony. At first, the world seemed dazzlingly beautiful, and everyone believed this was exactly how the world should be. But the balance was shattered when a wealthy individual engineered a child without flaws. So, how did I know this was going to be in the third myth? Well, remember when the Master of Fate read our palm? Each of the answers he gave us related to each of the Zaynes we know. except we hadn't met the Zayne who related to wealth yet. So I knew this had to be the Zayne related to wealth, but I needed more evidence. And that's when I discovered the real Galen had an incredible parallel to this story. Galen's father was a wealthy individual. And his father also had a dream in which the god of medicine told him to let Galen study medicine. So that was my theory being confirmed. In addition, Dr. Zayne is always called perfect and is skilled in so many things, always at the top of his class, even skipping several years at school. So this added even more credibility to my theory. And yes, I was freaking out when we literally saw the administrator who told us this story at the end of the myth. I was screaming, guys. I'm just so proud of that connection. Also, before I forget, the reason I was also convinced is in Master of Fate's answer, he talks about a treasure. This linked back to the Adventure Above the Clouds story where they were searching for a treasure and the treasure was the sun. So all of it came together beautifully and I was so excited when it was confirmed. Zayne being able to walk different timelines. So, the time lock key event was special here. I kept looking back at that event and wondering if there was more to it. So, as I mentioned, it was this part right here that got my eyebrows raised, Zayne being able to cross timelines. I then remembered how Dawnbreaker was also able to take Zayne over. I had suspected there would be some kind of reality bleeds or parallels, which led to me looking closer at the title of the myth, The Edge of Continuum. As I mentioned in my previous video, if you live in a continuum, you are between two possible realities within a sea of them. Remember my example, the colour blue on one side, the colour green on the other, and all of the possibilities between them. I deduced Zayne would be standing in that sea of possibilities, meaning he was possibly able to cross timelines and venture into different worlds. To back this up, I remembered in Dawnbreaker's anecdote, his dreams are not linear, they are fragmented. So time is all messed up and out of order for Dawnbreaker, and there's a whole theory to discuss in another video about him. But either way, I was confident we were having an everything everywhere all at once situation. And then the way I gasped at the plot twist, I was freaking out. It was literally everything everywhere all at once. Also, Zayne says this: "When you wake up, I hope we do not meet again." MC sleeps in Snow's embrace before Zayne disappears, and again, she is knocked out before Zayne sacrifices himself in the Tower of Secrets myth. Both times she wakes up and Zayne is no longer with her. When you wake up, I hope we do not meet again. So he's ensured MC's survival before he parts with her forever. In Sacred Chapter, he has failed at this. The Creatio Protocore. Now let's talk about the Creatio Protocore. How did I suspect we might be seeing this? It was simply because of the parallels to Foreseer's myth and the fact that the Creatio Protocore wasn't mentioned in Snow's Embrace. And if we were going to have a time-bending, mind-bending plot twist, then the Creatio Protocore had to be part of it. Which is why I was convinced we'd see Astra, and unfortunately we didn't explicitly see him. Anyway, I spoke about how I thought this scene in the main story could be the Creatio Protocore, or now I think the Creatio Stone. I suspected this because MC turned to ice, so Zayne would have taken back the Creatio Stone. I suspected he sealed it away somewhere. My guess is in this scene. But this is a very early theory, guys, as we also see Foreseer giving MC the Creatio Protocore, so I still need to flesh this theory out and figure out what the likely sequence of events will be. But if I'm somewhat right once again, this is going to blow the story wide open, and my mind is already going like in a million different directions with this one. The Master of Fate parallels. Now, I suspected we would have heavy parallels to Master of Fate because of Moonlit Dream. In a way, we did, but there were a number of parallels throughout with all of Zayne's memories, and I'll be doing a video on all those parallels I could see. However, Master of Fate being the first voice line to be uttered in this scene with "My snow won't melt" sent me into a frenzy, especially as I deduced that line was important. I do think of all the parallels, Snow's Embrace is the closest to Sacred Chapter. This image right here is what I'm working on and why I feel that way, but again, a video for another day. This is just a sneak peek. I would recommend you watch my previous video and the part in which I discussed my thoughts about how Snow's Embrace and Sacred Chapter were closely aligned. Seeing other Zaynes in this myth. Again, this goes back to my theory on the continuum and convergence of all timelines, and Zayne being able to walk across different ones. It would only be natural we would have at least seen one Zayne, or another Zayne, or all the Zaynes, and we did. It turned out to be MC hearing them and seeing all the different timelines. Finally, MC sung to Foreseer foreshadowing the third myth. So, I'm really proud of this one as well, because I was really nervous of my interpretation of this song, and I thought it might have been a little off, but as you can see, I wasn't wrong. My strongest connection was the Deceptive Amber Paradise. We had the Deceptive Amber Paradise connecting to the perfect world in the Fractal Library Q&A story, and then that world was mentioned in Sacred Chapter by Zayne. So guys, that is how my brain pieced this all together. Now, in saying that, you'll notice how I kept connecting all of the evidence I'd gathered together. I wasn't satisfied until I could find hints and connections between all of them. So, Moonlit Dream was my strongest piece of evidence and what I based this on. I did additional research on Chinese mythology, including the Jade Emperor, and found connections with that myth to Houyi and Chang'e, and then that set me on the right path with the yin and yang, moon and sun theory, and also the bow and arrow theory as well. So you can see how it all came together. And also looking at different mythology, so Greek mythology, Galen. And Galen connecting to Shengong was very exciting for me because I realized I was definitely onto something here. So again, guys, always gather your pieces of evidence. Figure out how they all connect to one another. That's the most important thing. If they do not connect and they're kind of fragmented, a writer, I don't think would do that. So I'm a writer myself, so I'm trying to learn from different mythologies right now and learn from different historical events for my story. And I want to find a way to connect them all. I don't want them to be, here's a story I borrowed from over here, and then here's another story which has zero connection to that story which I borrowed from here, because that will make the story very confusing and complicated. What the writers have done here is they've borrowed from a lot of different places. However, they haven't borrowed random bits and pieces. They've borrowed very similar mythologies from different places to inform the story. And that is how we, as the readers of that story, can go ahead and research and interpret and learn how all of these things connect together. So, that's how the theory crafting side of things work. And you've just got to be confident with yourself, guys, but also, if you think your theory is wrong and if you cannot find the connecting pieces, it is likely you're not on the right track. However, if you are adamant you are, find those connections, baby, because, you know, it will be there somewhere probably if you are that adamant. Remember how I said I worked off some gut feelings? Well, I've had gut feelings that have been incredibly wrong before. And of course, as you guys know, I really don't like the Astra is Zayne theory. However, I'm getting nervous because I'm starting to see certain parallels where Astra could be Zayne. However, I think I've got a theory in which Astra is something else entirely. And, you know, again, that's a theory for another day, probably next year, because Astra still blows my brain a lot. But anyway, guys, that's how everything came together. Hopefully this will help you, whether it's another love interest you want to dive deeply into, or even a different TV show, movie, book, or game series altogether. The most important thing is find evidence to back your theories up and connect all those pieces of evidence. Anyway, guys, this was so much fun. I love this myth so much. I'm so excited for the future of Zayne's story. I literally cannot wait. So thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a beautiful time zone, and as always, stay frosty.